Some way, somehow, we made it through the storm. After what felt like hours or even days of keeping the raft steady, the black clouds raining divine retribution slowly began to dissipate, revealing the morning sky. Louisa, Dallas, and Kenny's wife all puked their guts out when we were finally clear. I wanted to as well, but there was one thing I could not bear to look at. Not even once. My reflection. Kenny's wife stood up and walked towards the kneeling Dallas, rocking the boat. Dallas wiped his mouth with his hand.
Can I help you?
The woman delivered to Dallas a swift slap across the cheek, once again shaking the boat. A look of shock and awe plastered Dallas's face as he registered what had just happened. He immediately stood up onto his feet and glared down at the woman to see her look unfazed.
Bitch!
Saliva spewing on her forehead as he held his cheek.
What the fuck was that for?
You almost got us killed.
She barked back.
The hell are you talking about?
Even I was confused as Louisa and I watched.
You went left when I said to go right.
My body tensed as I instantly remembered what she was alluding to. The raft suddenly went in the opposite direction after she gave an order. It was Dallas that shifted his weight in the wrong direction, sending my dad's body off the raft. I shot him a scowl, and his anger was replaced with a sheepish frown that matched the lavender oozing from him.
I'm sorry. Water was hitting my face and I was so disoriented. I could barely hear what you were saying.
The woman continued her glare.
You're lucky I'm not my father. The negligence you showed should have warranted a quick exit to the bottom of the ocean.
Dallas did not respond but plopped back down on his knees and looked towards the ocean. Kenny's wife walked towards her side of the raft and knelt as well. She opened the compartment and pulled out 4 water bottles, tossing them out to each of us.
Make this bottle count.
She ordered before opening her own.
We don't know how long we'll be out here, so 1 bottle a day.
She took a sip from hers.
Okay.
I agreed.
Yes, ma'am.
Louisa agreed as well. Dallas turned his head to the bottle sitting next to him.
What do you mean 1? I'm a big guy. I would need like 2 or 3.
The woman's eyes could pierce steel as she shot more daggers at Dallas.
A belly full of ocean water is what you deserve. Yet I show you grace with that bottle.
Dallas spat.
Who the fuck left you in charge?
Out of the woman's face cracked a sarcastic smile.
If not for me, you 3 wouldn't be on this boat. Your friend there would have been on a date with the FIHS if I didn't jump in after her. Without me, you were all as good as dead. So if anyone objects to following my lead, speak now.
None of us said a word, and we continued to slowly drink our water, silently agreeing to the woman's terms. She aired a haze of perpetual light red aggression, even when we first met on the cruiser. Was she always this abrasive? It didn't matter. All that counted was her resourcefulness, which piqued my curiosity. I took a light swig from my bottle and turned to the woman.
How did you even get a hold of a raft like this?
It was in the emergency exit area.
She responded rather quickly.
While everyone panicked, I gathered everything I would need to get off of the ship.
Dallas knocked on the floor of the raft.
My uncle does riverboat fishing, and I know that a raft like this needs to be assembled.
His eyes now locked onto the woman's.
There is no way you assembled this raft in the time it took for the Intercontinental to sink.
The woman cut her eyes back to Dallas.
You're right, because I assembled this 2 days ago.
We all gave her a confused look.
So you knew this would happen?
Louisa nervously asked. The woman now made eye contact with Louisa.
No. I prepare for the worst even under the best circumstances.
She then eyed me.
I'm sure that you are glad I did.
But what of your husband?
I queried the strange woman.
You mean to tell me you still kept a level head even after the pirates killed him?
She paused for a second, then took another sip of her water.
We can waste time asking about each other's state of mind, or we can come up with a plan.
There was a light violet that had begun mixing with her perpetual hue of red. Before I could delve deeper into the woman, I turned to my left to see Louisa yelling in pain as she curled into a ball.
Louisa, what's wrong?
I put my hand on her shoulder.
I think it's the baby.
She said, holding her stomach. I looked down towards her stomach to see protrusions pop up here and there.
Just our fucking luck.
Dallas groaned, then threw his hands up.
We can't deliver a baby here.
Louisa sat back up, taking scattered breaths.
No.
She rubbed her belly.
He is just being feisty at the moment.
Crisis averted. The last thing we need is an emergency delivery.
Ahem.
The woman cleared her throat in an exaggerated manner.
We need a plan of action. The longer we sit here in the middle of the ocean, the slimmer our chances of survival.
I looked out towards the cobalt ocean, the void of blue nothing in every corner. There was no land in sight, and my gut wrenched from both seasickness and anxiety.
Let's just pick a direction and try our luck.
Dallas suggested.
We would be wasting resources without any assurance. There is bound to be an emergency ship or helicopter scouring the area now that the storm has passed. If we stray too far in a direction away from the wreckage, they may miss us.
The thrashing of the sun crusted my lips.
What do you suggest we do?
The woman pulled out one of the cans of Spam and opened it.
I hate to say it, but I suggest we wait.
Wait! God damn it. You want us to wait in the middle of the ocean?
Of course, Dallas protested.
Let's be proactive and get a move on.
Surprisingly, the woman smiled at him, taking a fingerful of the smelly meat.
I don't blame you for your skepticism.
She put it in her mouth and began chewing as she talked.
Both plans require a tremendous amount of luck, so I'll allow us to vote.
She swallowed her food, then continued.
All in favour of my plan, raise your hands.
I put my hand in the air and Dallas shot Louisa a death glare before she hesitantly joined me.
It's settled then.
The woman passed me the can of meat.
We will share 1 can of food a day until help arrives.
I looked at the gross slab of meat in a can and almost caved into throwing up. I couldn't believe that I had to eat this. Nevertheless, we needed to endure, so I took my fingerful.
I've got you this time.
Once again, the woman plunged her Spam-covered finger into the water with no success. Maybe the fish are tired of eating processed meat. We were down to our last half can of Spam, and we used some of it as bait to catch some fish. Every few hours, the woman would get a bite and yank out a small fry for us to eat, but it did little to quell the hunger pangs. I weakly turned my head towards Louisa, who was laying on her back, pregnant belly completely exposed to the waning evening sun. Our situation was miserable, but I could only imagine what she was going through. Ingesting fucking sashimi and salty meat while pregnant had to be torture. Dallas was no better. It almost seemed like his muscles deflated like floppy condoms these last few days. The once beautiful skin on his face was a plaster of red sunburn, which was the case for all of us, me included, if I considered checking. However, Dallas's appearance seemed to match this newfound unattractive behavior he had been demonstrating. He was unrecognizable from the man I'd always known. Then again, it almost seemed like he was always this person, and I finally saw the tiny, fragile man behind the curtain, a veil waiting to collapse as the comforts of modern society dispelled his facade. Am I any different, or am I the kettle calling the pot black? The only person that seemed to be in some spirit was the woman. Watching her continue to fish gave me inklings of hope. The woman's eyes grew big.
Mercury,
She yelled, then extended her hand to me.
pass me the can.
Okay.
I handed her the can. She scooped up the remaining meat, then dipped her fist back into the water. There was a look of shock on Dallas's face.
What are you doing?
His haze was completely violet, voice quaking with anxiety.
That was our last can.
The woman ignored him as she aggressively shook her arm into the blue ocean. She bit her lip and winced in pain as she brought her arm out of the water. Attached to it was a shark that was about 2 meters long, gnawing at her arm. It was writhing belligerently before the woman took the empty can of Spam and began bludgeoning the head of the shark with it. Dallas and I watched in shock and awe as the woman continued her assault, until the shark finally succumbed to the blows. She swung her shark arm towards me.
You gonna stare, or are you gonna help me take him off?
This strange woman is something else entirely. I stood up to hold the slimy creature, then we pried its mouth open to release her arm. Blood poured from the teeth marks, so the woman took off her dress, tore it into shreds, then wrapped the scraps around her bloodied arm. I did not notice before, but this woman's physique in her bra and panties was rather impressive as her abs glistened in the sunlight. That purple dress really never did her any favors.
Wake her up.
She pointed towards the resting Louisa.
We need all hands on deck for dinner tonight.
I gently tapped Louisa on her shoulder to awaken her, then we proceeded to dismember the slimy, scaly shark. It wasn't until late evening when we finally finished ripping apart the shark into edible pieces. Lighting our dinner was a starry night sky that made the water below us sparkle. Our nights floating in the ocean were always cloudy and too dark to do anything, but tonight we could dine plentifully under its splendor. Would have been romantic under different circumstances, maybe with red wine and gnocchi instead of chewy, raw seafood.
Remember, guys,
The woman began as she chewed.
leave a few pieces of meat for tomorrow's bait.
We all agreed and continued eating. Luisa's eyes peered up into the stars as she ate.
Beautiful, isn't it?
I asked, taking a sip from my bottle. A smile crept in Luisa's face.
Very much so. It reminds me of my childhood in the countryside of Navarre. The sky was always like this at night. I long to go back.
I would squash that hope now if I were you. We are going to die in the middle of the ocean. It's about time we all accepted it.
I turned my head to give Dallas a scathing look, but he returned it with an unsympathetic shrug. Luisa continued.
I have faith that we will be all right. Mi madre would always tell me that whenever you're lost in your darkest times, look towards Polaris and she will be your guiding light.
Her head was still facing the sky. I spun my head back to her.
Oh, what's that?
Kenny's wife stopped eating, then also turned towards Luisa.
Polaris, the North Star.
She barked.
Luisa, tell me. What side of the star formation are we right now?
Luisa brought her head down to face the woman, then looked back up and squinted her eyes.
I believe we are on the west side of the star formation. If I had a star chart, I could be more precise.
The woman threw down her food, then propped up to her feet, shaking the raft. She looked up at the starry sky, then down towards the ocean's horizon. With lightning quickness, she turned towards the raft's floor compartment and yanked the doors open.
Luisa, you may have saved us all.
For the first time ever, her aura had a mix of light green joy as she let out a seemingly genuine smile. The woman attempted to pull out the motor, then eyed Dallas.
I need your help now.
Dallas stood up and they pulled out the motor. They carried it towards Dallas's end of the boat and affixed it into the attachment.
I'm guessing you know where we are.
Dallas asked as he tightened the motor. The woman looked up to the sky again.
More or less. The storm may have taken us off course by a few kilometers, but we should be near land.
When she said that, a smile came from Dallas's face.
Take us that way.
She pointed her finger straight ahead. Dallas yanked on the motor to get it started.
With pleasure.
The motor's loud roar startled me, but I couldn't help but feel joy that we would be going home. Dallas took control of the motor as the raft sped ahead. The rest of us grabbed hold of the edges during the bumpy journey. After roughly 10 minutes of fast travel, something could be seen in the distance. I strained my eyes to see a beach come into formation. We were getting closer to land, but how? How did this woman know where land would be located? Dad mentioned that it's tradition for the guests of the Intercontinental to not know its whereabouts until after the cruise. So how did this strange woman know?
Keep us steady, Dallas.
The woman shouted through the roar of the motor. Little by little, the beach grew larger as trees and shrubbery came into view. The motor began making a strange sound before completely shutting off. Dallas checked the fuel meter, then slapped the motor.
Damn it, we're out of juice.
The woman pulled out the paddles from the compartment.
Then we put those muscles to good use.
She handed Dallas and I each a paddle while she held the third one.
Dallas, man the rear and we'll paddle up front.
Grabbing my paddle, I walked towards the adjacent side of the woman, knelt down, and we began slowly paddling. Luisa sat comfortably as she glided her hands through the peaceful ocean. Dallas, on the other hand, had to travel left and right to paddle in order to keep us straight. We were inching closer to the beach, but my shoulders were getting tired from the seemingly non-stop rowing, especially the shoulder that miraculously saved Dallas on the cruiser. Only when I was rowing did I realize I must have torn something, but of course, I had to endure.
I'm fucking tired.
Dallas bellyached, throwing his paddle in the middle of the raft.
Home base isn't going anywhere, so let's take a break for a second.
He plopped down on his butt and gave a deep breath as he looked up towards the sky. The woman stopped rowing and slowly turned her body to the lackadaisical Dallas, giving him a look that said she wished he would spontaneously combust. Her mist swung back to the striking red, evaporating the last half hour of strips of green optimism.
Get back to your station.
She roared. As much as it pained me, I mentally agreed with Dallas as to taking a break. Of course, I would keep that information to myself. Dallas crossed his arms behind his head.
Come on, babe, lighten up. We're almost at the finish line. We can take a light siesta before we cross the tape.
The woman tossed her paddle to the center, then marched to the loafing Dallas. She grabbed him by his stenched blazer and pulled him closer to her face. Despite now being face to face, Dallas's eyes still pointed towards the sky, looking rather unbothered.
You have been a thorn in my side for too long, you pompous, arrogant arsehole.
Luisa stood up and put her hand on the woman's shoulder.
It's okay. I'll row while Dallas rests.
Dallas flitted his eyes to the seething woman.
See? Problem solved.
He grabbed the woman's wrists and yanked them off of his blazer.
Now get your paws off of my Armani coat and go back to your station.
I should kill you.
Darling, I would love to see you try.
I finally stood up and separated the two.
Enough!
I picked up the woman's paddle and handed it to her.
Let's just get a move on.
The woman snatched it from me, then went back to her position. Louisa picked up Dallas's paddle and took his position. We endured ahead.
You would let a pregnant woman do your job.
The woman hissed as she paddled.
Yeah, whatever.
Dallas retorted.
Just get us to shop.
We were inching closer to our destination when I heard what sounded like a bottle opening. I turned my head to see Dallas unscrewing the top off his flask.
You still had that.
I asked incredulously. He took off the top and smiled.
We finally have something worth celebrating.
The woman stopped paddling.
Is that alcohol?
The finest moonshine on this side of the Mediterranean.
Dallas boasted.
Give me some.
The woman turned towards Dallas. Dallas gave her a sly smile.
Oh, you want some?
He waved the flask at her.
Say please and I'll show you some grace with a swig.
Without hesitation.
Please.
Say pretty please.
Pretty please.
Moss green haze spewed from Dallas as his smile grew wider.
Fetch.
The woman stomped towards Dallas, and I thought she was going to punch him, but she carefully received the flask from him.
Move.
She suddenly pushed past Dallas and trudged towards the motor. She opened the gas hatch of the motor and emptied the flask into it.
Hey, what the fuck?
Dallas shouted, leaping up after her. The woman gave him a pinpoint stiff arm to his navel, sending him hurtling to the floor. He heaved uncontrollably until he rushed towards the side of the raft to evacuate his insides into the black ocean. The woman smiled, then yanked on the motor's handle. She yanked it 2 more times and it purred and purred before finally turning on. We were back in business.